A number of people have asked me who has got to prove what in this Prince Harry trial that's upcoming against Mirror Group newspapers, and indeed how they're going to prove it. And this relates to not just his case, but any other case at all, because in any civil case, there are allegations made, much like there would be in a criminal trial. And then the rules, the civil procedure rules, require that you have to respond to those allegations, not just with pure denials. So that's what I'm going to explain in this video. This is actually going to be a two-part video. So this is the first overview part, and I'm going to look at the stories themselves in a separate video. And that will be out later today, hopefully. So welcome back on this fresh early summer morning. I am on the sofa, which is more comfortable to sit here and give you this overview. And so if you want to make sure you get the second part of this video, make sure you subscribe, ring that notification bell, because that will alert you when I put up new videos. If it's a video you don't want to watch, you can just ignore it. But it will alert you to those that you do want to watch. So in any civil claim, now this goes not just for Prince Harry, because he's got to follow the same rules, and Mirror Group newspapers have got to follow the same rules, but anybody that is subject party to a claim, whether you're the claimant or the defendant, you need to follow these rules. If you are a claimant, first of all, so in this case, Prince Harry and others making a claim, they have to set out the factual background as to what their claim is. These are done in the statement of case. It doesn't necessarily at this stage incorporate all of the evidence. That comes later. That comes in the form of witness statements and any other real evidence, such as documents and anything with any evidentiary value. But the statement of case should state the facts upon which that party relies, and not necessarily the law. So often I do see particulars of claim reciting whole chunks of law. That should come later as well, although some stuff it into the particulars of claim to try to persuade the judge that it's a serious claim. Sometimes I see that where it appears that the claim might be at risk of being struck out for not really putting forward a proper case. So they stuff it with law to bolster the facts of the claim. But it really shouldn't be that. The proper way of doing it should simply be a statement of your case. That's what it is. It's a statement of case. The statement of the facts upon which you rely to bring your claim. In other words, what has the other party done wrong if you're the claimant? And if you're the defendant, what your factual response is to those allegations. Just as a brief interlude with some fantastic news, you might remember some time ago I did a video on what became Eggs Direct, which was to support egg farmers that suffered during COVID, with supermarkets being extra selective about which eggs they use just because some of them had a slightly different colour. There were complaints that supermarkets were not paying a fair price to the egg farmers, so I decided to do a video and a community fundraiser to help build a site to support local egg farmers, and indeed those of you at home that might want to sell your own eggs. And so first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of those who contributed funds to make this community project a success. And secondly, all of those who committed any time and interest in the project. And after a few false starts and taking a lot longer than I might have expected, I am so pleased and proud to announce that we've secured a partnership with Versala, a shopping cart that has now made Eggs Direct a reality. It's a shopping system which allows egg farmers, and indeed anyone else at home for that matter, to have unlimited listings free of charge, a completely free website with no ongoing fees at all. The only fees are those that come with the sale, which cover the cost of making that sale, which are 2% capped at £1 per sale. And now eggsdirect.co.uk is well and truly a reality, thanks to all of you. And other than that, it is now a successful community project for any egg farmer, any farmer at all for that matter. You can also log in and start selling your own eggs from home. But it doesn't end there, because in the discussions to build this thing, we've decided to expand it out to include any kind of farm products at all. So farmshop.direct is going live very shortly, later today, which will allow you to set up your own shop and sell all range of different farm products. Again, with unlimited free listings, no monthly costs, a free web shop, and you can either use a custom URL from farmshop.direct or you can use your own URL. All powered by the same Vercel system with whom I have secured a partnership thanks to all of your help. So thank you so much for that. Please check it out in the description below. And now back to the video. And then we come to, now this can apply and assist you if you have any claim of your own. How do you reply to those allegations? So taking the particulars of claim in order, it will first set out who the parties are and what relationship the parties have to each other, because there must be some sort of relationship, either a duty of care or a contractual relationship or something like that. It will set out those relationships and the connection between the parties. The response, as in the defense to the claim, might admit some of those because they are simply factual. So there's no sense in denying those. There's no sense in the court wasting time arguing about whether or not there was a contractual relationship, by way of example. If there was a contractual relationship, the defendant might admit insofar as the contract existed. The defendant might say, insofar as there was a contract between us that I did this and they did that, or whoever paid however much amount, that paragraph is admitted, because that's the truth. When it comes to the allegations themselves, there are generally three ways that a defendant can respond. And so in respect of Mirror Group newspapers, this is very interesting in this case. And I will go into more detail about to which stories this applies in my video later today, providing I get time. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you will get an alert as to when that comes out. But there are principally three ways a defendant will respond to an allegation like that. The first I've already really covered. They either admit it, so this is a straight admission. That's not very common because most defendants are going to deny allegations. But an admission can either be a full admission, i.e. they admit that part, but then they might go on to say why it doesn't give rise to damages, or it didn't have any causative effect, such as it didn't cause loss. For example, in a negligence claim, they may admit negligence, but unless that negligence causes loss, and there's perhaps a break in the chain of causation somewhere, then the defendant may not be liable to those damages anyway, even if it's admitted that there was a breach of duty of care, i.e. negligence. But for the most part, allegations are denied, even if in part they are denied. It might be to a limited extent this bit is true, but the remainder of that paragraph is denied. And then we come on to the second principal response, which is a denial. Now, the civil procedure rules do not allow, and this is particularly important for those in international jurisdictions and not in England and Wales, because your rules may be very slightly different, but in England and Wales, at the very least, in our civil procedure rules, it is not enough to simply deny an allegation. That's called a bare denial. And if you write in, that didn't happen, it's nonsense, it's rubbish, that is not enough. You need to put forward a positive account of what you say really happened. And again, this is important in the Mirror Group newspapers case from Prince Harry and others, because there will be a mixture of, actually, no, this isn't what happened, this is what really happened. And so that is a denial with reasons. And you can use this in your own cases as well. If you deny that something happened, you can say, that's not true. What really happened is as follows, and then you state what really happened. The third is a bit of an unusual one, and will be particularly interesting in this case with Prince Harry, which is why I'm giving you this overview video as to how to understand it first, so that you can have this in mind when I do the second video later on. And the third response to these allegations in the claim is, at least within the profession, sometimes referred to as UTAP. The defendant is unable to admit or deny the allegations stated in this paragraph of the particulars of claim and requires the claimant to prove them. And so what that means essentially is, how would the defendant possibly know whether that's true or not? So let's say, for argument's sake, the claimant is saying that an allegation was made at a place that the defendant was not at and had no knowledge of. The defendant might say, the defendant has no knowledge of these events, wasn't there, didn't see it, didn't have records of it. Therefore, the defendant is unable to admit or deny the allegations in that paragraph, so requires the claimant to prove them. And so that is a subtle difference between a denial, because if you deny something, it means you know exactly what happened and it's not as the claimant suggests. Whereas the UTAP, unable to admit or deny, is simply saying, we don't know. How would we know? If the claimant says that they were at a particular place at a certain time, or a certain thing happened by a certain person at a certain time, or a certain person did a certain thing with instructions from someone else, the defendant may say, we don't know. We couldn't possibly know. Therefore, we are unable to admit or deny the allegations in that paragraph and require you to prove them. So again, this is all based on facts, but the response to those allegations are usually one of those three. In fact, they ought to be one of those three. There's a fourth danger that I'll come back to in a moment, but the principal three responses is either we admit, either in full or in part. How much of it do we admit? And if there's any law students watching, particularly if you're on the bar course and you are thinking about your drafting and you might come up against a defense, be very careful with the admit version of those, because your instructions will probably, you very often say that they deny these things, so be careful what you admit. If you admit something that's outside of your instructions or is not in your client's best interests or can simply be denied with reasons, or the third option, your defendant wouldn't know whether it's true or not, the admit is often dangerous because you are admitting it. So in some sense, when you admit a certain thing, yes, the contract was there, yes, we did this which breached the contract, or even yes, we did this thing which might result in the breach of contract, then that might amount to a full admission and your client would lose and be awarded to pay the full judgment. So the admission is usually to very simple non-contentious things, such as we admit that we were party to the contract, we admit that we were based at this address, we admit that we supplied certain goods, or that we're in the business of supplying certain goods. So Mirror Group newspapers might say, well, we admit that we did instruct journalists to go out and find stories for us that were subcontractors or whatever. When it comes to the allegations, they're likely to deny the majority of the serious allegations with reasons. But there will be some, as I said, where they come back and say, we're unable to admit or deny these, meaning they don't have enough information to outright deny it and put forward a positive case. They simply don't have enough information, full stop. So they're unable to admit or deny and require the prince to prove it. Now, the final one that I said I'd come back to, which is a dangerous one, is if you don't deal with an allegation at all, then a defendant that fails to deal with the allegations within the particulars of claim is taken to admit them. This is perhaps a feature within our particular jurisdiction and our civil procedure rules. But again, as a law student, if you are a law student watching this, because I know some of you do, if you fail to deal with an allegation within the particulars of claim, your defendant is taken to admit it. And that, of course, is not in their best interests. To some degree, it's in breach of the rules because you have to deal with those allegations. But the result is your defendant is likely to be taken to admit the allegations in that portion of the particulars of claim. So certainly in a bar school exam type scenario, you would have to deal with every allegation. And the way we typically do that in practice is we take the particulars of claim and we go through paragraph by paragraph. And when you're learning how to do this, you can highlight bits of each paragraph to say, this is an allegation, this is a statement, this is information. And which bit of it are you required to respond to? What's the allegation? It might be a breach, it might be causation, it might be damages, it might be anything that you need to respond to. And so you go through those, and this is what I'll talk about briefly, how it might relate to these stories for Mirror Group newspapers. And you respond to each of those elements of the particulars of claim, and you either admit them, or admit them in part, or you admit them and say why it doesn't give rise to anything else. Perhaps you might deny them with reasons. You wouldn't just do a bare denial. That's not sufficient. Or you're unable to admit or deny them, and you require them to prove it. So that's the overview of how these claims are brought and defended. And so with that in mind, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll receive the next video, which I will talk about the stories themselves, which Prince Harry is bringing in this claim that Mirror Group newspapers are going to have to reply to and respond to in the way that I've just described within the defense to this particular claim. So I hope you found that interesting as an overview. Make sure you come back for the next video, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.